So for today's session, we have Eddie Richardson, Meadow Hall, Evelyn Contreras, and Debi Meche, a recent Harvard College graduate and investment analyst at Morgan Stanley. And then Migdalia is also on, keeping track of the chat. But to get us started, if you all could just go around and tell us a little bit about yourselves. Meadow, if you'd like to start for us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Meadow Hall. I am a sophomore at Harvard College. I am with the Student Advisory Council for HUECU. So a lot of interaction with the college is kind of what Eddie and I are here for. But I'm really excited to get to answer everybody's questions and kind of get the ball rolling. I know that there was a lot to unpack with the first three sessions, so I'd love to dive right in. Eddie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks for that, Meadow. Hey everyone, my name's Eddie. I'm a senior at the college studying applied math in Elliott House. This is my second year working with the credit union, and I've loved every bit of it, just like working with the community engagement team and understanding the work that the credit union does in the Harvard community, but also in just like the Cambridge and greater Boston community. So like by no means am I a financial expert or anything, but I've learned a lot like working with the credit union, and I'm excited to share more and reflect on a lot of things here. Great, I guess I can pass over to Debi.
Hi everyone, my name's Debi. As Sarah mentioned, I graduated 2021, so I was a student not too long ago. While at Harvard, I was in Elliott House. I studied sociology and government, and I'm originally from Miami, but currently living in New York, where I'm working as an investment management analyst at Morgan Stanley. While at school, I actually served in the Student Advisory Council, which is where I learned so much about financial goals and planning. So I'm really excited to be here and share my experience with all of you. I will pass it on to Evelyn.
Hi everybody, my name is Evelyn Contreras. I am the lead for Next Gen, which is a program for first generation students, both college and graduate students. And we hold events throughout the year. I'm also a coordinator for the college, and I'm also a graduate student at Harvard Extension, where I'm majoring in bioengineering and nanotechnology. And I'm in a little bit of a different, field. I do have a full-time job. I also work at Mass General on the weekends, and I manage to pay for school as I work. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Evelyn, you have a ton of hats that I pretty much had no clue about. So that's awesome to hear. It sounds like you are managing much more than just your money these days. But to start off, really just wanting to think about sharing your experiences navigating finances as a student. Maybe are there decisions you made along your journey or advice you were given that helped you, or maybe some advice you wish you had when you're thinking about finances as a student? Eddie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, of course. So like I came to college, like still like on my parents' bank account and everything. Like I didn't really know too much about anything related to like credit or like investing in general. So like my freshman and sophomore year, like when I had like an on-campus job, like any of the money that I had that was left over just kind of stayed in my checking account. And I would spend it some days, or if not, it just kind of collected dust. And so like fast forward to like my sophomore year, I like in the middle of COVID, like I got my first like real internship, and I was making like pretty decent money, like especially considering the fact that like I was at home, like I wasn't really doing much like in the middle of the pandemic. And so I started to hear about the stock market. I started to hear about like a lot of the growth in that space, but I didn't really have like an avenue to get into it. And so I got really lucky. Like the following semester, like a friend of mine came up to me with this idea to like teach high school students about investing, and like kind of start this nonprofit, this club at Harvard. And so I told him I had no idea about anything related to like investing, but like he reassured me that like I could really like find a path there. And so I kind of joined on a whim, and it was like a really great decision for me. So through the program, like every week I would teach these students about like different like concepts related to investing. So like starting with like basic stuff about stocks and bonds to like more complicated things about like mutual funds and like dollar cost averaging and things like that. And so each week, like we would have like these really like very like pointed discussions about like what was going on in the economy, like how like you would make like an investment decision, and we would make mock portfolios, and like that really gave me the confidence to kind of invest for myself. And so since then, like I've like I got the confidence to make my own account, like my own like retirement account. Like I've been putting money in there like on a monthly basis ever since then. So I've been in the stock market for like a little over a year now, and like I've definitely made some mistakes and like tried to go after some home runs, but I think like overall I've learned a ton, and like my only real regret is just like not having started earlier. But yeah, I'm not Meadow. I guess if you want to go next and have any
Yeah.
thoughts.
So going into college, I'm a first generation college student. I also come from a low income family. So money has always been sort of a sensitive subject. So I knew when I got to college that I needed a job first and foremost. And it took me a little bit to realize that my time is worth something. I know that we tend to lose that a lot with, I came from a state where the minimum wage is the federal minimum wage, so $7.25 an hour, which is kind of hard. But I noticed that there are a lot of people willing to pay for your time. And I think a lot of handling your finances is also built into learning your self-worth. So when I started getting jobs and I started acquiring knowledge, even with the SAC, you know, the more time I spent in this role, the more knowledge I acquired, which made it easier for me to get other jobs and to start to establish a sort of steady income for myself, even if it was a little smaller than maybe if I was like out on my own and not in college. But so I think once I learned my worth and what my time could do for me, I started budgeting, which was really interesting because my parents don't know how to budget. Like there's not that knowledge there, which is why I think these financial literacy things that we could do for the community are so important. But just started budgeting, which, you know, it doesn't have to be super fancy. A lot of it was just dividing everything by 4. How much money do I have for the month, and divide it by 4 and see how much money I have for the week and days and so on and so forth. So I think as long as you have the initiative to just start somewhere, there are going to be people along the way and organizations like the HUECU who will give you knowledge and teach you how to build. But by no means think that your financial journey has to be fancy or full of bells and whistles. Like if it starts off and you're just figuring out how much money you have week to week, that is budgeting, and you're doing a great job, and it's a great start. And that's where I started. And, you know, I think it's a great platform. So if anybody has any questions, yeah, feel free to just drop them in the Q&A. I know that, you know, sometimes when we're Q&A, we need like really specific questions. Absolutely not. Please, anything, any question is welcome.
Debbie, was there anything that during your time in college that really set you up for success before you became a professional in this past year?
I think so. So I had a similar journey to Meadow, actually. I also am first generation coming from a low income family. And I think for me, it was, I always knew I had to work, right? Now the question was where. Trying to find a job was at first a little bit difficult, didn't know where to look, what I was looking for. I think that the searching process itself teaches you a lot. The people you meet along the way are really influential, and they can become connections down the line and friends. So that's really awesome. I think one important thing for me, for first was the budgeting, right? Knowing how much you have and not spending above that. But in addition to that, setting myself a savings goal. I think sometimes we talk about investing, but before we can invest, we have to save. So, and for a lot of us, if we don't have the financial stability to start off the bat, it's something that takes conscious effort and conscious planning. So that was something I decided to start fairly early on. I think it was it was pretty decisive in helping me along the way and even after graduation. Starting to save early on by budgeting, by knowing how much money was available and how much money I could actually save without affecting my expenses. It was very important. And I think another important thing was starting to build credit. I know that credit is a topic of everyone's concern, and it's covered through these sessions. But starting to build credit early on was actually pretty important for my journey as well. And the earlier you start, the better.
100%. I think, Debbie, you're exactly right. I think a lot of people see things like investing, and I think, Eddie, you hit on this too, is like this really far out thing that just really, people who have high net worth, that's what they're doing. But most Americans, their first opportunity to invest is through something like a retirement account. And we don't always think about that, our first opportunity to do that will be when we have that first job. And so, Eddie and Meadow, you both touched on this a little bit, but something that I think a lot of Harvard College students probably are thinking about at this point in time is, how do you budget in the summers when you may have your first internship, or maybe it's a first kind of more full-time-ish job? So what does a budget look like for you two when you're thinking about those times?
I'll go ahead and start. A budget for me, I'm actually going through this process right now. So it is a heavy workload. It's a lot to handle, but a good budget is, I always look at online, your bank accounts they'll list for you on your online banking apps all your purchases. And so I like to go through and look at how much money I spent each month, but more importantly, what do I spend that money on? And then from there, I find that it's easier, rather than going and finding a random Excel spreadsheet online that'll help you. But if you have it personalized to your spending habits, then it'll be better for you to more accurately kind of figure out how much money you're going to spend over the summer. And so that's what I do, is I just blow it up for whatever time period. I think for me, it's going to be about 10 weeks for whatever internship I'm looking at. And I think there are a lot of internships that will pay for certain aspects of your time with them, whether that be housing in addition to your payment. Some of them have food stipends. So I think it's important to look into the fine print of whatever you're signing up for, because they do have resources to help you. But sometimes if you overlook them, then it might bite you in the long run. But I think for budgeting purposes, I think it's best to study your own spending habits and then apply it to something later, rather than some, I think, what is the average that they put on there? Like, people estimate that you spend like $100 on groceries every month. And for me, that's not realistic, because me and my mini fridge do not need $100 worth of groceries every month. So I think the best way to budget is just to get to know yourself a little bit better. That's what has always helped me. Eddie, do you want to add a little bit more onto that?
Yeah, definitely. I think like for me, like a big thing was like understanding, like first starting with housing. Like last summer, like I had to get my first apartment, and so that was like something that I was not really used to, and so I had to really think about like the cost of housing. And so I ended up choosing a place that I thought was like the best. Like, it was kind of far from my office, but it was the cheapest. But I really recommend like looking at all the like hidden costs with, like, especially considering housing. Like, I didn't realize I was going to have to spend so much money on like Ubers and like on the subway and all that. And that was like something that I had to like budget in throughout the summer. And so I think another thing that Meadow brought up earlier is like your time is super valuable. And so like finding a place where like I was spending like 45 minutes like to an hour like each way, like in like commute. And so especially when you're working these long hours during your internship, like you really want some time just to be like at your apartment, just to like relax. And so that was something that I wish I kind of had budgeted in beforehand. I think once my internship started, like another thing that like I had to like learn was like food, which is like super important. Like, especially like if you're working like pretty like long hours, like it's something that you're not going to want to have to think about during the week. So really like reflecting on like what I would do is like each Sunday night, like I would like go like grocery shopping. I'd like maybe like make like some meals or something just to like prepare myself for the week. So if I knew like I was gonna have like something like really stressful on like Tuesday, like I could just like eat leftovers then. Or if I knew I was gonna have a team dinner on like Thursday, like I wasn't going to yeah, make anything in preparation for that. And so like when you're trying to focus on your job and focus on just like doing the best like during your internship, like it's really important to kind of like minimize all the like external things like that. You don't want to be cooking in like at a meeting at the same time. And then like I guess the last thing like with budgeting for me was like automating like as much as I could, like especially with when it came to saving. Like that's kind of where I first got my start with like saving, and like which led to investing was like automatically like putting money in like my saving account like whenever I got a new paycheck, just because like it was so tempting for me just to like get money like for the first time, like more money than like I had like ever really seen before, and just like want to spend it. But like it was like super important for me to kind of like put it away and like have like a clear amount of money that I was working with for like each month, and like something that's realistic, like something that I knew that like I was more than enough, but at the same time like still have some in like in my savings that like I knew I like would have stashed away for like any bad thing that could happen. So yeah, that was like super helpful for me. It was like a constant learning process, but I do think like I yeah, come out of it a lot better than I started.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. And Eddie and Meadow, I think both touched on this, but the emergency savings piece, we've heard it in, I think, every single session now of Wintersession, because it is so important. And so I highly recommend starting with emergency savings before moving on to any other type of savings, because that's what's going to help you with good credit in the future, right? So if an emergency comes up, you're dipping into your savings and not spending on a credit card that you can't pay off. And so it's going to help you with your credit, but then it also helps you in the future with making sure you're investing in your retirement and doing all of those things that you do need to continue doing. So thanks so much, both of you. And then for Debbie and Evelyn, some specifically thinking about students who are going to be graduating soon. Maybe they're going to graduate school, or maybe they're going to be a professional. What are some tips that you might have on managing your finances for that transition from student to professional or student to graduate student?
For me, when you do transfer to working full-time and you get all the benefits, take time to actually read what they are and what you're getting. And if your job matches like a 401k, take advantage of that, because that's for your future. And although right now, you might need that extra $200 or whatnot, at the end of the day, it's for your future. And I think that for me, I grew up with a lot of cash. Cash was key to everything. I was a waitress. My parents also were very frugal. And if you didn't have the cash, you couldn't buy it. But credit is a tool. You just have to learn how to use it, and then you can pay it back.
Yeah, to that point, I think I 100% agree about the first job and knowing what the benefits are, taking time to go through them, to set them up. That's very important. I think sometimes the actual process of graduating, as exciting as it is, it can also be a little bit nerve-wracking. That is why starting as early as possible on the budgeting and the savings is so important, especially when you are either going from part-time job to full-time job, or you don't have a job yet after graduation, or working through that process. Having a little bit of savings really helps to ease your mind through that process. I think one important thing, at least in my experience, and this is something, I'm not saying it's what it should be done, but it can be done if it applies to you, is that sometimes getting a low interest loan for your tuition or whatever it is you need to pay for school may work for the sake of having a little bit of liquidity and a little bit of savings at hand. It doesn't always work. So if it's not your case, consult with your financial advisor, but it could work mainly because it is important for you to be liquid enough, as Sarah was saying, to have your emergency fund, so that you're not dipping into credit cards that have very high interest rates or things like that if something were to happen. So through that transition, as early as you can, start budgeting, start saving, consider all of your options in terms of your financial planning. And once you do get that job, start setting up your benefits, 401k, retirement, etc. So that's kind of where I'd start.
Thank you both. And to Debbie's point, speaking about the relocation of it all, right? So a lot of you probably won't be having a job right here. If you do, great, welcome to the Boston working life. But if not, and relocation is in your future, see if that is a benefit of your new job. Maybe there is some type of 0% loan. I know here at Harvard, there is for union workers, that's part of our benefits package. We do have a relocation loan. And so that may be part of your benefits. And I cannot tell you how many benefits there are with full-time jobs. The list literally goes on forever, and it can be overwhelming. And so, like Evelyn and Debbie both said, it is so important to set those goals, understand what's important as you're kind of dipping your toe into the water. And if I had the opportunity to go back and kind of tell my first job self something, it would be to start investing in my retirement because of, compound interest. It is the most powerful tool that we have when we do graduate from college, right? And so now I, of course, am doing it now, and it's never too late to start. And the best time to start is today. So I highly recommend that as well. So one question that I have just to pose to all of you that I think is one that is really interesting, and I just would love to hear everybody's answers. And then we'll kind of move into any questions that the audience has asked. But what is one game-changing moment you've made in your financial game plan? Or what is one thing you wish you did differently? I already kind of gave my answer. So we'll start. Evelyn, why don't you give us a start?
Yeah, so I think that right now there's a trend of like, treat yourself, it's fine, or you deserve it. And like you do, right? You work hard, and it's hard sometimes not to, you go out with your friends and you're a little bit pressured, but do remember that your dollar is power. So if you, make sure that it's something that you actually want to do, make sure that it's something that you care about. I have a lot of plants, that's my hobby, but I don't spend a lot of money on it. And if I do, I budget it. I make sure that I have a little bit of miscellaneous on my monthly budget, because it's ongoing, and let's say something does happen, I go on a trip and one of them dies, I can have money to buy another one. Things like that we don't really think about, but like a sushi dinner here or there does add up eventually. So just make sure that you keep track of that, and also make sure that you, with your purchasing power, you do support businesses and companies that you truly support.
I definitely agree, especially with the supporting small businesses and businesses. I know that when we do things for clubs or even for the HUECU, we tend to look for a lot of businesses that are owned by people of color or they're queer owned. So if that's something that's really important to you, there are ways to budget that. It's something that was really new to me. I come from a small town, so we didn't really have a lot of options and nobody really talked about it. But I came to Boston and I was like, wow, like this is a great way for me to spend my money on me, but also spend it on something that I want to support anyways. As far as the questions that Sarah asked, I wish I would have advocated for myself financially sooner. I walked into the HUECU after working with you guys for a year and was like, okay, I have no credit. I don't know what to do. Somebody please help me. And there are tons of people where it is literally their job to help you, and you don't have to work at the credit union to get that help, but you can advocate for yourself, and you can be like, okay, I don't have a cosigner, I need options. What can you do for me? And I know that specifically HUECU was very accommodating of my needs and even listed outside sources for me to get help with credit. Or when I established a separate checking account for my one back home, I wanted to have a different bank other than one that was 1,000 miles away from me. And they were really helpful. If you advocate for yourself at these financial institutions, it's so much easier than spending several hours on Google just trying to figure out what should I do if I want to budget whatever. Like, there are resources and there are people who get paid to help you, and all you have to do is ask and advocate for yourself. So I think that's really, it's a hard thing to learn, especially if you're not really financially secure or you don't have that financial knowledge. And I just say that again, first gen low income, it's a difficult thing to talk about, but if you can advocate for yourself and you know what you want, you will achieve it. You just have to ask the right people.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think for me, it was kind of like a two-step process that I was really like grateful for. I think first understanding kind of what work and where I was like in terms of my financial journey. So I think understanding like just how much like debt I had, like what like how much money was like in my like checking account and my saving account. Like when I was able to kind of like aggregate all of those, and like at first it started with like I know Meadow mentioned like me just kind of like coming up with like an Excel spreadsheet that like didn't really work super well. And then kind of like finding like more like tailored like methods to kind of understanding where like I was at. And so once I like got really comfortable with like where I was at, like my net worth and everything, like I felt like I could like actually start investing. And I think that's like once I kind of got over that hurdle, like and like started to visualize like where I was at, that was really important for me to kind of like take the step into like actually like taking advantage of like some of the money and like some of that like the resources I had access to. And so I think with that, like the next step was just kind of being able to set like attainable life goals, like and stand with like my financial goals. So like this summer, like I think I try to be super deliberate about like setting like financial goals. Like I wanted to like have saved this much money, but also like making goals that weren't like different from my like actual personal goals. Like if I had like for example, like I had a friend who came to visit this summer, and like I like if like financial goals like were my only concern, like I probably wouldn't have like spent that much money, like spend that much time with him. Like I would have focused more on work and everything. But I knew that it was important that I wanted to spend time with my friend that I hadn't seen in a couple of years. Like we went to this nice dinner and things like that. And so I think it's really important to kind of not view your financial goals as like in contrast with like the things you want to accomplish in life and like the ways you want to spend time with the people you really care about. And when I was able to kind of like first like understand where I was at financially, I was much more comfortable with like having a nice dinner like every once in a while, or making it like an investment in something that like I thought was really promising and really interesting. Like it makes you like a lot more comfortable to be able to take these risks and like to make really calculated decisions when if you just kind of have money like here and there and wherever like floating around, you're not going to know exactly where you're at and like what the consequences are of each like decision you make in regard to your financial health. So yeah, I think that's like been a big game changer for me and something that like I really cherish and something I try to keep in mind like whenever I make any like sizable financial decision.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you all have said. For me, to answer the first part of the question, I probably sound like a broken record, but definitely that decision to start working, budgeting, and saving early on was very instrumental, as well as starting the credit journey early on. Mainly because they kind of helped to build the foundation that I needed to then take other steps later on. In terms of what I would do different, there's a couple of things. So I think that I would have loved to start investing earlier. I had jobs and I was saving, but I wasn't really investing through most of college. So I think that's something I would definitely, if I were to go back, repair. But another thing actually is I was so focused on budgeting and saving that I actually missed out on a lot of experiences that now looking back, I kind of wish I had. I'm not talking about like the going out every weekend and spending a bunch of money on things that you don't really care about. But I'm talking about being intentional about having experiences through college. I was that group of students that lost 2 years of college life to the pandemic. So my junior year, we all went home. Never really was the same. We had a virtual graduation. So I thought I was going to be able to do a lot of things my junior and senior year of college, and then didn't due to the pandemic. Obviously, that is something that you can't predict. But if you're mindful of putting some of your money, putting some of your financial goals towards those things that you do want to do throughout your experience in college and grad school, that's actually something that could really pay off in the end, while also being mindful about your other financial goals. And that would be all.
Thanks so much, everyone. And I think that's one of the reasons that we put together this panel. You know, we're thinking about Wintersession. We were like, we love, you know, retirement. We love investing. We love the credit, because those give us kind of like the steps and the ways that we can be prepared for things and do things the right way with our money. But then we also felt like there was a need for having more of a conversation about our values and how those fit into our money practices, right? And you know, I think everyone hit on this a little bit. It's so important that when we are talking about money, we're also talking about the feelings that go along with money and the value that money has in our life. It's not just an Excel spreadsheet. Our life can't fit into an Excel spreadsheet, right? Our experiences, there's always a balance there. And I don't know if anyone has the perfect balance in life, probably not. But even one of our speakers yesterday, who is a certified financial planner, Jake Northrup, he has an article right now out about him where instead of putting $20,000 towards a down payment on a house, they felt it was more important to spend that money on going on a trip to Antarctica. And you don't normally hear that from a certified financial planner. But that's using your money to live the life that you'd like to live. And I think that that's really what comes across in a lot of what I heard you all say, is that we need to use our money as a tool to be a part of the life that we want to live. And we need to do that responsibly. And I think we've learned a lot of the tools so far throughout Wintersession of how to do that responsibly. And so I appreciate you all bringing that up again. Doesn't look like we have any questions in the Q&A yet, but feel free to drop those. I did have a couple of questions that I thought may be good to touch on. One of them being, do you have any favorite resources for managing your money? Whether it's blogs that you read, apps that you use, or any companies that you feel like are doing a good job of leading you in the right direction. Anybody is welcome to get us started with that one.
So I love using Mint as an app. So good. It tells me, calm down. But also I like writing things down. I used to have an Excel sheet, but I just didn't feel personal. It didn't feel real. So I do have a budget planner, and it's a piece of paper. So like I look at it, I take my time. I'm just putting a link in it's just from Amazon. I really like it. It's just writing it intentionally. I feel like it's different, and it goes in. I don't know. It just something connects, and so I follow through with it versus just typing it.
Wow, I just looked at the budget planner from Amazon, and it's definitely gonna have to go in my cart. So thank you for that. But yes, I second the Mint app. I get daily notifications about my less than perfect purchases, and how that is affecting my checking account. So that's a good way to just, there are other budgeting apps or apps that kind of function like your mobile banking that like keep track of your purchases and just kind of let you know that like, hey, you spent 24% of your overall expenditure this month on like Dunkin' coffees. And I'm like, gosh, that's terrible. No, I didn't. So I think sometimes when apps just calculate that for you and you can see that, that for me made it easier to budget with that information. So just know that if you start budgeting and then you see that information, you're like, that doesn't line up at all with what I had planned. That's totally fine. That's normal. Just use that information and redo a budget. It's totally, money and financials are fluid. Cannot express that enough. After everything I have learned, you're going to keep learning. You're going to keep finding new things. And you're going to keep going, oh my gosh, that is not what I thought. And you're going to have to fix it again. It's totally normal. Don't get frustrated. But yeah, I recommend even just like weekly check-ins with your mobile banking app. I know I've said it like 3 times, but it's like my favorite thing to do. It's just to go through and check like, okay, what exactly are all my purchases? And if I keep seeing like repeats, I'm like, okay, this is where I need to write this down and be like, don't go to Barnes and Noble every week, maybe every other week, do a little something. I think the best way to budget is just look at your own personal spending habits, because they will call you out, especially if you have the Mint app.
Yeah, I echo with Mint. Like I just started using it and it's been like really fantastic when it comes to just like, yeah, budgeting and like understanding where my money is going. I would say another like tool that I've been using, like especially like since I've started investing, is like Wealthfront. Like it's a great like tool to kind of visualize like at like a high level, like where like all your assets are going and like what like percentage of your assets is in this bucket and that bucket. Because yeah, it's like hard when you like might have like $500 here, like $1,000 here. But like it kind of aggregates like all my like my checking account, like my savings, and like my retirement accounts like together. So I can kind of like think more concretely about like what like my net worth is, like what my like value is, and like I can set like actual attainable goals. Like I can't just say like yeah, if I want to say like I want to be a millionaire like next year, like obviously that's like not super attainable. Like maybe it is, who knows? But right now it's not like really in the picture. But like I can set like targeted goals like maybe like each month or so. And so like I can think like realistically about things without like kind of having this like weird like pie in the sky vision of like what like wealth means and like what it is. Like Wealthfront actually lets me see it like on a concrete basis that I can kind of like tangibly like understand in real time.
I'll jump in. So I echo the app usage. It's very useful. Try them out. Use your bank apps too. They're all actually evolving and they're becoming really useful. In addition to that, well, my husband and I we use plain old spreadsheets. I know it's boring, but it works for us. We usually share it through Google Sheets and we both have access to it. We know what's going on, where the money is going. So that's helpful. And in addition to that, I've actually found the Credit Karma app fairly useful to monitor when you have more than one credit line, whether it's loans, car loans, student loans, credit card loans, whatever it is that you have credit on, even home loans. So you can monitor all of your credit through that app. It's really useful. You can see your credit score as well through several avenues, which you can also do with HUCU. So there's that. But I find it to be helpful, and it can also help you to file your taxes on your own if that's something that you want to try out.
Everyone, I love to hear about what other people are using because I think we can all learn about the resources that each of us have. A couple of things that come to mind for me, of course, I have to plug it, but it is HUECU's blog, our personal finance blog. Even some people on our call today have written some great articles for us. So I'll shout that out as well. And I'm sure Migdalia will be putting it in the chat very soon. She's probably running to get the link for that now. But our blog has personal finance topics. I mean, just a million different reputable sources that you can go to and look at. And not just our blog, I'll say it about most financial institutions do have blogs these days to answer those questions. One that I've used before to compare credit card offers is NerdWallet. They have a great tool for comparing credit card offers. I know when I was getting my first credit card, all I could think about were the rewards that I was going to be getting for spending money. But really what I needed to look at was the interest rate. So I'm glad that NerdWallet had that for me to look through. And then the last one that I'll plug is You Need a Budget app, or YNAB as some people call it. For those who are not students, it does cost money. But if you're a student, you can actually get your YNAB or You Need a Budget for free. And you can do that. It's kind of like a Mint-ish, except it's kind of a hybrid of an Excel and a Mint app a little bit. And You Need a Budget, or YNAB as they call it. They also have great blogs and a podcast to listen to as well. I believe they're also on TikTok, but I'm not going to go that far with all this because you could spend hours on TikTok as I do every night. So another question is really kind of reframing that conversation again. What are some goals that you have for your money in the future? Are there things that you're saving for now that you're looking forward to? Are there things that you hope to save for in the future?
I can be really cheesy with this real quick. I forever have wanted a Maine Coon cat, which if you buy a kitten, it's like at least $1,200. And I don't want children. So it's like, this is what I'm working towards. So it's really cheesy, but in the back of my mind, I know that like in my savings account, a little bit of that is going towards a self-cleaning litter box. And a little bit of it is going towards like grooming expenses, just like a tiny portion that I keep in the back of my head. Because I figure if I don't have a kid, then like I can put the money towards a cat and my, future apartment or whatever. But it's just something I've created a little game with myself. So I guess a little tidbit of advice is that if you find something that you get really excited about, that little boost of serotonin when you like put money into your savings account is good. That is great if you can find something that you want to work towards. Because if you can find a way to make budgeting and money management not a chore, then you're 5 steps ahead of the game, I promise you. So I think finding something that you really want to work for is probably half the battle with savings.
Yeah, for me, it was my friends, like we've like always discussed like going on a big trip like once you graduate, like especially with COVID. And so yeah, like my roommate is from Spain, and like I've never been to Europe before, and so he's always talked about like we should always do like a group trip. And so I've been spending like saving money like in hopes of that coming to fruition like very soon. So hopefully in a few months I will be having my best life somewhere in Europe, in Spain. But yeah, that's been like something I've been thinking about just because it'd be a good opportunity just like as friends, like once we graduate, just kind of like relax before we start our full-time jobs. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I will definitely like do whatever I can to make it happen. So I think like that's been one thing I've just been able to like visualize and like anticipate as I like go about like these investing in retirement and savings accounts.
I'm saving up because I'm applying to med school this year, and it's very expensive, very expensive. And I also want to, so my family's in California, and I want to still hold, a good relationship. And I've been absent for so long. I've been on the East Coast for a while. So I am planning on like traveling more and just making sure that that's in my budget. I took out a credit card from an airline, and it actually has great rewards. So just making sure that I use it, not too excessively, but looking at those rewards really help.
Yeah, definitely having goals and having things that you're excited about that you're saving for helps to save. On my end, saving jointly with my husband for like three things. So, one actually is the most fun, and that is we had planned a honeymoon slash post graduation trip, but we couldn't do it because of COVID. So instead, now we're going to do an anniversary trip. We want to go international, so we're saving for that, and that's pretty fun. That makes me really excited and happy every time we put money away. um, but there's two other goals that are a little bit more, I guess, financially centered, and it's we want to move back to Florida, which is where I'm from, and buy a home there. So we're saving for both the moving and and buying the home. So that process takes time, but we're working towards that.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I love hearing where everyone is wanting to save their money, because I think that's one of the money mind tricks that we can use for ourselves when we are saving for something is actually being specific about it. Because you're right, if you're excited about saving for that, it's a lot better than if you're like, I'm just going to put this money away forever into space. And it's like, no, I'm actually saving it for something. Yes, thank you so much. Someone asked, where can we access the recordings? All of the recordings for Wintersession will be on our YouTube page. And I'm sure McDowell will put that in the chat, but we'll also be sending an email to all registrants tomorrow with the links for everything. So if you want to just come back and hear my voice as much as possible these next few days, you can definitely do that. One final question for everyone before we wrap up for today is, what is the one thing that you'd like for people to take away, either from what you've said today or from Wintersession overall, that you think is the thing that you would like for folks to kind of think about and ruminate on as they move forward?
I guess my biggest takeaway from this and what I want other people to know is that while budgeting or managing your finances can be difficult, it is meant to be beneficial for you. So if it's a really taxing thing for you to manage your money, let's find some things that you enjoy or some things you want to work towards. This doesn't need to be something that takes a lot of your energy and requires a lot of work and no benefits come of it. And it's, have something that works for you, advocate for yourself, know your worth, and just figure out, I guess, what you want your financial life to look like. And everybody else can help you build the footwork and the steps to achieve that goal. So as long as you figure out what the end goal is like, there is a path and we will find a way. Just ask the right people, ask around, and not to be super cheesy, but believe in yourself. Money is hard, money managing is hard, but it's doable and everybody is capable of it, I promise. So best of luck.
Yeah, I would definitely say that like a big thing is just to set goals, like understand like what you want like out of life. Like they don't have to be like financially centered, but understand like how like managing your finances and like understanding your wealth like can contribute positively to like things you want to do in society and what brings you joy. And I think with that, like just starting early like is I think the biggest thing. Like if you're like understanding that there's like really like low effort ways to kind of get involved in the space, to really like take control of your finances and like to really like be like the end all be all and like your wealth generation process. Like I think understanding that there's like very like low effort ways to get involved in the space and like understanding how to start as early as you can is the best advice. Like something I wish I would have started early. Like I wish I would have like started investing early. I wish I would have started like getting a credit card earlier, things like that. But at the end of the day, like I'm grateful that I've done it. Like I did it yesterday rather than doing it today. And I think that's like the mindset that everyone should kind of take with them.
I I've had a lot of negative feelings when it comes to finances for quite a few years. Just a lot of anxiety, a lot of procrastination, and like not wanting to like really look at what's going on, how much debt I had. But like, you know, you have to realize that money comes and goes. We all have different stages, and things can change in a month. Things can change in a year. You know, you can 5 years from now, you could be in a huge, very different situation. So don't, you know, the past is the past, and move forward, and things will be better if they're not better right now. So yeah, don't let yourself feel, you know, sit in that space of feeling bad. You can always improve your situation.
100% agree. I think one thing I would emphasize is everybody's journey is so different, and that's okay. Starting from where you are towards where you want to go, that part of the journey, that is what matters. Working every day, even if it's just a little bit towards that goal, that is what's going to get you there. It's important to try to put aside, it's hard to put aside fears or anxiety around finances, and really realizing that it's a tool that works for us if we're willing to use it. One important thing is leveraging the resources that you have. If you're listening to this, you have HUECU, and that's a huge resource. Lots of questions answered. So if you don't understand something, the HUECU blog, the website, as well as the individuals that work there and help every client, literally including myself, through a lot of questions. So highly recommend that. Leverage those resources, and don't really like compare your financial journey to like your peers, because that may just look very different. Have a goal in mind about where you want to get, and work within those resources to make it happen.
Thanks so much, everyone. And thank you so much for those parting words, but also for everything today. I think really overall what we can take away from this is that it's time to have more conversations about money. This conversation hopefully starts your conversations between your peers and your friends, maybe your parents, and maybe it's other family members. I hope that this begins those conversations for you, because we can never have too many conversations about money and our mindsets around them. So thank you all so much, Meadow, Eddie, Evelyn, and Debbie, for all that you contributed today and in the future. So I thank you all so much for that.